So yeah, for the next 40 minutes or so, maybe a bit shorter, I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction to the Heritage Science Data Service, which is part of the Richards initiative, the Research Infrastructure for Conservation and Heritage Science, funded by AHRC. So what I'm going to try and cover, this is a brief outline. First of all, I think I should try and say what heritage science is, or at least what we understand by it. Then I'm going to introduce the Richards programme more broadly, because you may not be familiar with that, and we sit within it. And then talk specifically about the HSDS, introduce our services and data catalogues, virtual research environments, which were just launched indeed Monday of this week. And then I thought our cascading grants programme might be of interest. And then question we're often getting asked is, well, how does the HSDS differ from the ADS? So I'll try and answer that. And then I'm going to step out a bit more broadly, because HSDS, sorry, I'm struggling with it, sits within a European landscape and the European research infrastructure for heritage science. So I'll say a little bit about that, and apologies in advance for all the acronyms that this presentation inevitably involves. So to kick off, what do we understand by heritage science? Well, the AHRC, who funded us, define it as the application of scientific techniques and technologies to improve our understanding, conservation, management and engagement with cultural heritage. It ensures that heritage assets remain safe to view, display, handle and study, and is therefore critical to the continued economic viability of the heritage sector. But put more simply, heritage science is the use of scientific techniques to answer questions about our cultural heritage. So you'll see immediately from that there is indeed an overlap with what many CIfA members will be familiar with just as archaeology. We use lots of scientific techniques to answer questions about heritage. I'll come back to that. So heritage science at the moment has become quite a buzz area because of the amount of indirect government investment in it as part of their infrastructure programme through UKRI. And for us, this specifically means Richards, which has been a 80 million commitment of funding over the next, 5 years immediately, 10 years definitely, which has funded 31 projects, a mix of facilities and collections comprising 144 project partners and one heritage science data service, which is us, based in York. I'm going to step a little bit back in history, though, just to give you the sort of background to this and how this has come about. And it actually goes back to this House of Lords report from 2006 on science and heritage. Some of you may be old enough to remember this, but one of the key conclusions was that our standing, i.e. the UK standing in science-based conservation, which was once seen as world leading, is now under threat, the sector fragmented and undervalued. So that really set the stage for a series of attempts to take action in this area. The first was a investment programme in grants co-funded by the EPSRC and the AHRC, a science and heritage programme led by May Kassar, then at UCL, which funded a number of projects. But also within that period, in 2010, the National Heritage Science Forum was established with the aim of trying to bring together a number of stakeholders in this arena, the sort of national bodies such as Historic England, CADU, etc., that have an interest in the sector. More recently, there have been some specific AHRC investments. In 2020, the capability for collections fund, which was part of also setting up what they're calling world-class labs. And this funding hasn't just gone to universities, it's gone to a number of independent research organisations, museums, galleries, archives as well, really to invest in their heritage science laboratory facilities. And then as part of the most recent HRC strategic delivery plan, there was a commitment to invest with a national infrastructure, but with the idea that this infrastructure should be shared. So it wasn't just investing in individual places, but with the idea that equipment installed in one place would be available for users from across the country, really focusing on a national capability. And that really led to the establishment of Richards in 2023 and 3 funding calls. The first to host collections, in effect reference collections, and they funded 13 in the end of those, as places where people could go and consult and study, work out what they'd got. And then secondly, to host facilities, and there have been 17 of those, mainly laboratories, some of them mobile facilities, in the sense that, for example, geophysics equipment that could be loaned and taken out on site. And then 1 heritage science data service, and ADS led a consortium of national bodies to bid to host this, and we were successful, and so we launched in 2024. Note that slide says these are tranche 1. There will be a tranche 2 call, which I think is going to be more directed and focused on filling in some of the gaps, as it were, in that national map. So that will be launched this autumn. So I'm not going to go through all 30 of the facilities and collections. They are available on the Richards web pages and indeed from our own HSDS catalogue of them. But just a few examples there on the page. University of Southampton, a facility for underwater archaeology. Next one down, actually, in my own university in York, BioArc laboratory with tools for ancient DNA and proteomics analysis, zooms analysis. And then probably of particular interest to the Archives Group, the collections facilities. So, for example, there's a National Trust collection facility, which is really aiming at cataloguing the National Trust's extensive database of materials that it holds. A different example from Scotland, the National Museum of Scotland, their archaeological human remains collection, which is being rehoused in purpose-built premises where people will be able to then visit and study it. So those are just 4 examples out of the 30. But what I wanted to spend a little time telling you about is how you can gain access to these facilities. And this is through a thing called the Richards Access Fund, which gives grants of up to £20,000 to cover the costs of you using one of these facilities. Now, in the simplest case, this could simply be travel and accommodation, but more commonly with laboratory usage, it's covering the costs of the scientific analysis. So in a sense, the money goes to the lab, but you then get to use that lab for free, whether it's doing some stable isotopes analysis or ancient DNA, or simply consulting a reference collection. So the bad news is that the first call of the Richards Access Fund has closed, and I think there were about 60 applications. The successful ones are about to be announced later in June, and then that work is expected to be complete by March next year. But there will be a second call in the autumn of this year. So if you've got material which you think would benefit from analysis by one of these facilities, then look out for that. And you can see that in terms of the who can apply, it's really very, very broad. Whether it's institutions from the GLAM sector, individual researchers, academic organisations, charitable bodies, commercial companies. So contracting units are definitely eligible to apply for this fund, although obviously it's not going to cover costs which should normally be covered through development control or by other funders. To give you an example of the sorts of projects that have been funded, here are 5 what they called catalyst projects, which were, well, early tests really that were for the application process, which were announced earlier this year. And they give an indication of the broad variety of things that are eligible for funding. So there was one with the DMAC facility at MMU, which is at MMU they have very advanced scanning facilities, and there they were scanning objects from the Portland Basin Museum to make them more accessible for the visually impaired, in that you could then create 3D models of them. So that's the first one. Second, British Motor Museum applying to work with Dave Thacker at English Heritage on looking at the conservation required for their extensive archive of the automotive industry. Physical films that were in poor condition, but using the conservation specialists at English Heritage to do an assessment of what treatments are going to be needed. Then a more traditional archaeological one, probably many of you have heard of the site at Sulgrave. They're managed by Northamptonshire ARC, but working with the facility, the Biocultural Hive at Exeter, to analyse the bioarchaeology of the site. And then the fourth one is another bioarchaeology one, where Mike Parker Pearson is going to be using, or rather his archaeobotanist is going to be using the extensive reference collections in Sheffield to do analyse the plant remains and charcoal from Durrington Walls. And then lastly, a geophysics example where Bradford University are going to be, or may have already been actually, to Trimontium to do extensive survey, working there with AOC Archaeology and the local trust, the Trimontium Trust. So hopefully that gives you an idea. And as I say, the whole first tranche of the Access Fund will be announced shortly, so you'll be able to see some other examples announced on the Richards website. So that brings me then really to explain what our role as HSDS is in all this. So our mission statement is about unlocking potential for innovation in heritage science and conservation research and its capacity to advance understanding, preservation and management of UK heritage. And in a sense, we provide the backbone to the Richards programme, because we provide the catalogue of the research facilities and the route by which you can apply for access to those facilities. But on the data side, we provide an aggregating function, pulling together heritage science data collections, making them fair, making them navigable, searchable, allowing you to cross-search collections that we hold with those of some of our major partners, and also cataloguing all the data that is produced as a result of the Access Fund research. So this is underpinned by the repository managed by ADS, and there is a requirement for recipients of the Access Fund to deposit their data within that repository to ensure its security into the long term. And then the fourth strand of what we do is this latest edition, working with colleagues at the Hartree Centre, STFC, developing a suite of virtual research environments and software tools to allow researchers to visualize and analyze data. And I'll give some examples of this in a moment. This is who we are. 17 members of the team, about to be joined by an 18th team member, an additional archivist. You will probably recognise some of these people. Some of them were working with ADS as well, and indeed they join the larger ADS team. In total, across ADS and HSDS, we are now about 40 members of staff. But I'd highlight in particular Valeria, who is our collections development manager. And if you use the Access Fund, it would primarily Valeria will be your first point of contact about any data management queries. Many of you may know Kieran as well, our standards manager, who's now extending to heritage science data standards. And you may know Nikki Garland, our training and comms manager, who's now overseeing training across ADS and HSDS. But we're not doing this alone. We have a number of key project partners. This first group are providing a lot of the sort of technical support, but NHSF I would single out as doing a lot of the work on user needs definition. And indeed they have a survey out at the moment, part of a series of surveys. I know we all love filling in surveys, but I would encourage you at the moment, the links to it or all over our social media at the moment or on our website, because this is your chance to help inform how the service should develop in the future and tell us about your user needs. So the work is being undertaken by Amanda Foster and Sam Paul, if you may know them well, and they've been running a series of focus groups, but they have an online survey out at the moment, so please do fill that in. So a key part of our organisation. And then I've already mentioned the Hartree Centre, who are a core partner doing a lot of the IT technical development for the VREs in particular. Ben Edwards at MMU is overseeing the data collection for the services catalogue and gathering information for that. And then we have two technical software development partners, Flex and Teal, who are one of the approved UK developers for Archers, and we're working with the Getty on making sure there is a smooth workflow between Archers for Science and also their reference collection system, Rascals, which is used by the Getty Institute themselves, so that data in those systems can be seamlessly imported into the HSDS catalogue. And we're also working with Cartography, who are the developers of Research Space, which is a laboratory management software system used by the National Archives in their conservation labs, also by the National Gallery. I believe it's going to be adopted by the National Museum here in Wales. Again, we're working with them to make sure that there is a seamless route from those lab management systems into our repository and data catalogue. And then we have another 9 core partners who are initial data providers working with us over the next 3 years to pump prime really the data catalogue. So ADS counts as a partner in this, but obviously that's also ourselves, and our data catalogue has been primed by heritage science collections that were already in the ADS catalogue. But our first external partner data set, I'll show you some examples of it in a moment, is actually Museum Wales, and from whom we're taking paintings conservation data, completely different area from what we're familiar with. And then, as you can see, we're also working with some other key organisations, BGS, Historic England, Historic Environment Scotland, Natural History Museum, the National Archives, National Gallery, and the British Museum, who are all supplying important heritage science data sets. But as well as the data and the metadata provision, they're also helping us develop new data standards, specific vocabularies from within their own expertise, and guiding us really on, for example, in areas we're unfamiliar with, such as paintings. The National Gallery is running a paint samples working group to define the key data fields that we will need to record for that, so that the data is reusable and findable. And similarly, the Natural History Museum are providing similar services, providing advice on archaeobotany as well, working with Q on that. BGS providing input on thin sections. So we have a number of working parties going on at the moment for different areas of expertise and where there's likely to be a critical mass of collections. So this is where we are timeline wise. We were launched in September 2024. Our initial implementation phase ran till last September, when we launched the data catalogue and the services catalogue, starting to do a lot of work on the vocabularies that we needed to use supporting the Richards projects. But we're now in phase 2, where we're starting to train users. So there's information about training sessions generally online, being run by Nikki or by Ewan, our training officer. Information about those on our website you can book for. Kieran is developing or leading the development of additional guides to good practice. You may be familiar with the ADS series, which has been revamped, but there are also upcoming new guides on geophysics. I think will be the first one, of badly needed update to that, but also a guide on thin sections in particular will be coming along in the future. But then we're doing, as I mentioned, user needs work, more work on standards and populating the catalogues and building the VREs. So this implementation phase will run until next summer, by which time we notionally, and if we are on target, should reach steady state development. And that initial phase then of steady state runs till August 29, but then for a further 5 years at least beyond that. And yeah, obviously the plan is then to continue into perpetuity, as with following a similar model as with ADS indeed. So in very simple terms, this is the architecture, a very simplified diagram with people depositing data through our new ingest system. The high-tech bit, I'm not sure, HRC isn't really in a skyscraper, but that's the development of the VREs. And then the ADS repository storing the data with, and HRC are also providing support. We have access to over 1 petabyte of data storage should we need it at HRC. And then in terms of end use of that, the data catalogues for both HSDS and ADS, and indeed metadata coming out of that data store where appropriate, also for the European portal that we collaborate on, Ariadne. So data that goes in is then visible in multiple shop windows. So this is then the repository hosted by ADS, and I wanted to include a photo of our new premises. We moved here on Monday. It's been quite a busy week, actually. Not all staff are in the office yet. That will be from next week. You may have heard that the Archaeology in York's moving out of King's Manor, and we're one of the first groups to go. But we are based now in the Guildhall, still in central York, still very accessible from the railway station as well. But why we're able to hit the ground running as HSDS is we are building on the last 30 years work by ADS as a UK national digital research infrastructure. As I mentioned, I've got 40 staff working across both. We hold CoreTrustSeal accreditation as a digital repository, but we were also the first digital-only archive to be accredited by TNA. So we're a mandated digital archive for the UK research councils and other bodies, including Historic England as well. And we now, please say, provide access to over 2.4 million UK heritage records, over 100,000 fieldwork reports, over 5,000 comprehensive digital project archives with all the sorts of data types that encompasses, and over 100 terabytes of data. If you want to deposit data or are required to deposit data with HSDS, there is a lot of information available on our website. What I'd highlight particularly is the service that Katie Green, who I think saw on the call, is responsible for our new ingest system, which was launched at the CIfA conference, and has extensive in-page guidance on how to use that. Already, a lot of organisations are already switching over from the previous system, Adds Easy to Ingest, because it's a lot easier to use. And this is the way in for deposit, whether it is either intended for ADS or for HSDS, using the same system, and there is a costing calculator there. Now, whether HSDS is the mandated archive depends a little bit on the type of data that you're dealing with and also where you're based. We have got a list of alternative approved repositories on our website that are also CoreTrustSeal approved in general. So for data from Wales, I'm highlighting in particular there in red that obviously the Royal Commission remains the approved digital archive for Welsh data, or data relating to Welsh sites more accurately. And we have an agreement with them that we will take metadata for that into the catalogue, the same way we're also doing with with HES in Scotland. So it's accessible from the HSDS catalogue, but will link down to archives held in Aberystwyth. And similarly with some specialist data types. So, for example, oceanographic data or ancient DNA data, we recognise that there are repositories which may be more suitable in those cases. But the user journey is a little bit as follows, that an end user can apply to Richards for funding to access one of the collections or facilities. They will make use of that probably, and if they generate new data, that will be deposited with us or with one of these other approved repositories. The requirement is that that's 3-month deadline from the date of the completion of the analysis, but we can allow publication embargo periods to allow people to publish their research results of up to a couple of years. But the data goes into the metadata goes into the catalogue. A lot of the data is stored with us, and then there's a seamless interface now with the virtual research environments if you want to do further analyses on the data. There are some other routes to data deposit. We're mentioned with the core partners, we're working a lot with legacy data to prime the catalogue. But what I want to highlight particularly is our programme of cascading grants, which may be of interest. So, in fact, next Monday, in this busy period, we're about to launch round 2 of our cascading grants programme with about £500,000 available to applicants, and there's going to be a couple of webinars, one on the 10th, which I think is next Wednesday, and then one on the 16th, which again you can register for via the HSDS website if you want to find out more. I'll just very briefly outline what you can bid for. There's as I mentioned, £500,000 available. We're anticipating this will fund around 20 to 25 projects. So there are 2 funding streams. One is to enable or enhance access to heritage science and conservation data sets, which you can bid for up to 25,000. So this could include preparing an existing data set for deposit. So if often well aware data sets can be a bit of a mess, not suitable for reuse, need tidying, sorting, metadata adding. So that's one type of application, or bringing together disparate collections that might relate to a single site but are now spread about through different museums and archives. It's not primarily for digitisation, but some digitisation might be acceptable within the scheme. So that's the first programme. The second funding stream is to work with the software engineers at AHRC to develop your own tailored VRE applications and workflows. So far, we've released a standard desktop with various standard software QGIS and so forth available, but we also have some from round 1. We're already funding some specific VREs that might be of interest. For example, automated feature detection in large-scale LiDAR data. Software engineers working with the aerophotographic unit at Historic England on that. And then another one where Historic England is the partner, Bayesian chronological analysis for all, where, say, if you've got a site with hundreds of radiocarbon dates and you want to calibrate them using OxCal and then do Bayesian analysis, which can take a standard laptop several days to compute using the high-powered Osprey cluster at Hartree. something that would have taken days should run in a matter of minutes. So we'll hopefully really speed up work. Again, there are extensive pages on our website for the small grants. In round one, we funded, I'm highlighting here a specific Welsh example. All know the Newport medieval ship, and we already have the extensive photographic archive for that in ADS, but it's really rather difficult to navigate because there are so many components to it. So this is an example where we're enhancing existing data, and Nigel Nailing at Swansea and Toby Jones got funding now to use HBIM to help them visualize the whole ship, build a whole 3D model of it, and associate the different individual images and 3D models within that. So that's going to be quite exciting. But again, you can see the range of things that we funded on the website. So moving swiftly on, quick preview of the catalogues. I won't go through these in detail, just the best way to explore them is going online. The HSDS data catalogue has just short of 10,000 resources in it at the moment. Some of them drawn, as I mentioned, from ADS. So, and they range across the full range of heritage science. So, tree ring analysis of oak timbers comes up there. But then you see the next couple of examples are conservation data, indeed from paintings. These are from the National, from Museum Wales. So this is data. This is the metadata for a data set supplied by them for a painting of Dolbarden Castle by Wilson, and all the conservation data that relating to treatments from 1996 to 2005. We've minted a DOI for it, so it's now got a permanent reference point. But the advantage of looking at it in the HSDS catalogue as well is that you can see it alongside other resources from that area. So having drilled into the map there, you can also click on the link from Coughlane and the official description listing of Dolbarden Castle. So you've got access to the painting of the castle and also the architectural and archaeological summary. This is the archive of the conservation data. At the moment, apologise, this is still in ADS archive branding. We're working on a HSDS template at the moment, but I just wanted to show you the sort of range of data there, the condition reports, text reports, but also all the X-ray images, so forth. I particularly like this painting because it showed the X-ray shows that there was the canvas had previously been used for some human portraiture, as well as a portrait of a woman underlying the castle, which was only visible in the X-ray. Moving on, the catalogue of services. This is where you go to find the facilities that you may be able to use to analyse your own data sets and collections. Again, best way to explore it is online. There's a free text search, a map search. You can filter by the particular method or technique that you want to use with extensive drop-down lists. So if you want remote sensing, then all the different types of remote sensing and where they are available from. And because I've selected remote sensing, it's pulling up 5 of these facilities where you can apply for access to remote sensing kit of various types, including the Bradford labs, which were already mentioned, but also the Isaac Centre at Nottingham Trent do different sorts of imaging and remote sensing, or there's an imaging lab at the University of Exeter as well. So depending where you are in the country, it may suit you to go to one place rather than another, or it may depend if you need access to a specific method or technique. One of the facilities is in Wales, in Cardiff, Perform, led by Nicola Emerson, is, and working closely also with the building retrofit facilities in Scotland and England. But this is a facility focusing on building management, monitoring deterioration of structures through humidity and temperature measurement and so forth, and producing extensive scientific data sets for the monitoring data. And then just one slide to whet your appetite, because say only launched on Monday, but if you go to the HSDS website and click on data and services, it will bring you to one click down to the VREs, where you can register for the virtual desktop. And this would be a particular use if you're working on a project where you want to share data with someone else, right? And we've got, for example, Blender installed on there, so you can develop quite large 3D models and explore them online there, and have your own data storage area within the AHRC centre. But as I mentioned, there will be more specialised VREs coming along over the next 12 months. So what is the difference between ADS and the HSDS? Well, the short answer is that there isn't really one. The underpinning architecture is shared, the ingest system, the repository, the metadata knowledge base, it's got the same data standards. You can deposit using ingest into both ADS and HSDS, and you can tell us where you want, which catalogue you think your data should be in, but our archivist will also decide for you according to the definitions that we're applying. If it's archaeological data, it will appear in the ADS, but if it's got a scientific aspect and meets the definition of that, it will also appear in the HSDS data catalogue. And with OASIS, I know OASIS isn't really used widely in Wales, but OASIS reports are being tagged as HSDS where relevant. Critically, it's the same charging policy. There's no advantage either way. But if, as I mentioned, if it's, or I hope I mentioned, if it's an HSDS core partner data or deriving from the Access Fund, then it's free of charge. It's covered by our core grant. Otherwise, I'm afraid it's the same charging policy applies for commercial use, whether it's going into HSDS or ADS. But critically as well, it's basically it's the same people doing it. And you may, if you visited the ADS data catalogue, you'll see it's now identical to the HSDS one in look and feel. So moving between them should be fairly straightforward. I know I'm running out of time, I think, so I'm going to move on now just to sum up there. So what's our future vision? Well, 4 things really. Sort of using us increases visibility of data sets. We're going to be expanding the catalogue with much greater variety of collections. You can participate with us through these grant funding and training opportunities, and you can explore innovation using the VREs and the tool sets. But if I've got time, Jonathan, I will just finish with 2 or 3 slides on just setting this in a European context, which I mentioned at the beginning, because the UK has joined ERIS. Independent of Brexit, we are now a paid up member of the European Research Infrastructure for Heritage Science, which means that UK researchers can also access facilities in a number of other countries. So basically, it's a shared pot of money that the UK contributes to. So it expands the range of collections and facilities that you can use, and there's a separate access fund. So these are the countries that are already signed up. Others are joining at the moment. ERIS is managed from a central hub in Italy in Pisa, but there are national nodes, and Richards is the UK national node for ERIS, so we're part of that. And ERIS is modelled on 4 basic types of laboratories, really. Arch Lab, which are archives, Fix Labs, large scale, fixed, as it says, names on the tin, laboratory facilities. The mobile labs, as in the geophysics example, where you might go out to something or for scanning, and Digilab. And in effect, the HSDS is the UK Digilab, data and digital tools provision. I'm going to skip over that slide, which really is just a European slide showing how these different labs are interconnected, but also I'll just highlight the importance of digital twins, which we're researching as well, linked to Digilab. But final slide. This is the relationship between Richards and ERIS, and these are the UK facilities that are part of ERIS. So actually you can apply for access for funding to visit any of these facilities also via the ERIS data catalogue, if that makes sense. And Heritage Science Data Service, in a sense, because we're providing access to reference collections in ERIS terms, we're a bit of a crossover between ArchLab and Digilab. So thank you very much